What's the worst HR is not your friend story you've ever witnessed? Em here, let's enjoy some amazing HR stories that will make you question if there is an HR that you report HR to. Story 1. Every second Friday of the month, people in my office would get drinks after work. One time, it happened to fall on my birthday. Because they let me pick the bar, I figured I would just invite some friends there too to meet up with me after. Usually these drinks lasted from like 4 to 5:30 with my coworkers. Well, one coworker, who was generally a bit odd, stayed and sort of stuck to me and my friends. I didn't really want her there, but she couldn't take a hint, and I was 3 cocktails in, so I just gave up and didn't say anything. One of my friends starts talking about intimate time. Nothing particularly vulgar or kinky, or even about our personal lives. It was just mainly about the politics of that and relationships. The following Tuesday, I got an email from HR about having inappropriate conversations with coworkers. I tried to explain what happened. And even though I think the person believed me, as the other workers corroborated my story, I was written up for sexual misconduct. I obviously did not want that on my record, so I escalated it all the way up the company. And eventually, we had a 4-hour meeting with a regional HR person, where my coworker just cried and caved. Then afterwards, she had a bunch of people in trouble for a toxic work environment, because nobody wanted to be around her, and she was never invited to any social events. It was the dumbest freaking thing I've ever experienced. Somebody commented, "What a cluster freak." This just sounds like someone was sad and lonely and didn't understand that they're not always wanted, and then decided to complain about a conversation they weren't even wanted in the first place. I'm happy that OP didn't let themselves be a scapegoat and took it up the chain, and that the person who made the complaint was kind of shunned from the whole office. Story 2. At my last real job before striking out on my own, I had an exit interview with the HR lady, who was actually just someone who was friends with the company president who was filling in, because the actual HR lady with a degree in HR and everything quit. A lot of people at this place quit. It was a terrible place to work with out-of-touch management and delusions of grandeur, limping along building websites for a business niche that was mostly old people who thought the internet was magic. During the exit interview, she asked why I was leaving. I told her I liked my coworkers a lot, but hated the company. She got this exasperated look and got genuinely upset, and told me that she'd been getting that same line from everybody else who quit and had their exit interview recently. It boggles my mind that they could hear the same thing over and over again from so many people putting in their time, until they could go on to something better and not stop to think they should change something. Look, a lot of people in higher up management won't try to fix anything unless they start to no longer benefit from it. Until their sales take a hit or they get in some kind of legal trouble, my guess is that they won't ever try to change. Story 3. Overall, I've been able to get along with HR departments, with one exception. I was working a help desk job for a company during college, and the head of HR called in for help. He was making an Excel spreadsheet and couldn't figure out how to make a formula do what he wanted. I offered to come take a look as we were in the same building, and he told me I couldn't, because the spreadsheet was full of confidential information. So I asked him if he could describe what exactly he was trying to do without giving away any specific info. And he told me that what he was trying to do was confidential. So I clarified that he wanted me to tell him how to do something, but I couldn't see it, and he wouldn't even tell me what it was he was trying to do. At that point, he agreed that I wouldn't be able to assist him since he couldn't divulge anything. As soon as we hung up, he called my boss to complain that I was useless. I understand things are confidential, and that has to be the first priority. But there had to have been some way to divulge some information so OP could help, do their job and solve the problem. Maybe have OP fill out a non-disclosure agreement or something, instead of just complaining when you won't let OP do their job. Story 4. Pulled into a meeting with 2 HR reps in the middle of my shift. Taken to this really nice boardroom, which was confusing because I was just a grunt. And this is literally floors above where I should ever be. They sat me down and said basically, "What do you have to say for yourself?" Me, still confused, tells them I have no idea what they're talking about. Everyone is really quiet and serious, and I'm scared poopless. And they say you know what you did. This is cause for termination, blah, blah. I'm literally thinking this is really excessive for being a few minutes late sometimes. I insist that I don't know what's going on. One of them maybe realized something was wrong and flips open a file and says, "You're blank, right?" Turns out they got me mixed up with someone else who's the same name. On the elevator ride down by myself, I was still sweating. Don't know what that other person did, but man, HR does not play. Story 5. I went to HR to report that my team's manager was illegally shorting all of our paychecks. HR's response was to adopt a new, company-wide policy addressing the paycheck issue and backpaying most people for a certain amount, and also to frame me for work avoidance. HR and IT disabled part of my login account to a tool we used, and then fired me a few months later after failing to fix the problem and allowing me to actually do my job. They tried to deny my unemployment claim afterward, told the unemployment rep that they had logs showing that I did something to break the tool. I don't even have access to break in the first place. They also didn't think to disable my email access in a timely manner, so I was able to back up all my emails with IT documenting exactly what went down. Unemployment approved my claim and hit them with a major penalty to their insurance. I do love a good story where the big bad corporate guy gets in trouble. Really helps me keep my morale up as a frontline person. Story 6. I worked in HR and here's my advice. Never, ever willingly give up any information on phishing questions. Make sure your answers are brief, succinct, and don't elaborate unless absolutely necessary. Don't give secondhand information unless it directly impacts you or your work environment. My goal was to protect the bottom line under the guise of employee relations. If you become a headache and disruptive, regardless if you are in the right, we will find a way to terminate your employment. I spent hours upon hours in training, learning how to ask the right questions to get to the company's desired results. I will admit this may not be true for all HR departments, but for larger companies, we are not your friend, and our attitude and pseudo-compassion is used as a disarming tactic to obtain the information we're looking for. Despite what you may be told, we do have an agenda. Story 7. HR hired consultants to run morale-building employee input sessions. Basically saying, we're not from the company, you can tell us all the things you don't like about working here and would like to see changes, and we'll put it all into a report for management. Don't worry, everything is anonymous. We just need material for a report, and you guys get to have your say in improving things around here. Turns out HR and the consultants recorded all of the sessions and played the highlights for management. People were disciplined for criticizing the company or their immediate superiors, and any shred of faith or trust in management that the employees may have had was completely incinerated. Managers now complain that they don't know what's going on with their teams because nobody tells them anything. I wonder why. I never understand this logic of, let me ask for genuine constructive criticism or things I can do better, and they get mad or punish the people who make the suggestions. If you're so soft that you can't take feedback, then maybe don't ask for it. Wow, what a novel idea. Story 8. The HR payroll manager at a small hospital I worked at had a bad habit of not paying out the sign-on bonus that was paid out incrementally in 3 payments through the course of a year, and sign-on bonuses for picking up extra shifts. After repeated requests to be belatedly compensated, I took it to corporate, who addressed my issue immediately. A couple weeks later, I was terminated on what amounted to a technicality, where I forgot my badge one shift and my relief was to take over sitting with a patient, causing me to receive more points against me than if I had called out for that shift. When I was called in to receive my notification, the director of nursing was shocked, but ultimately, not much she could do. Story 9. HR ordered me to downgrade my 3 excellent employee reviews to satisfactory because management didn't recognize their names. I got written up for telling my employees this. HR denied they told me anything, even though I had the emails from them documenting it. Totally worth it. My employees were excellent and got the raises they deserved. Someone commented, I saw a similar situation. The company has a policy where 10% of the workers had to get bad performance reviews, which meant no raise that year. What the company didn't take into account is that some teams are small and hyper-specialized. You can imagine what happened next. A bunch of crucial employees quit, and that policy was canceled. But the damage was done. The funny thing is that the companies are the ones who implemented these raise policies in the first place. Nobody was forcing them to do it. So when they decide to backtrack, they really have no one to blame it on other than themselves. Props to OP for saving the messages, though. That was a really smart move on their part. Story 10. Upon giving 2 weeks' notice, I get this stupid rant about millennial snowflakes, how we can't take the stress of a real job, and how we think we're so important and unique. But in reality, the only thing that would happen is that they would find another engineer to fill in for me, and things would be like I never existed. After the initial shock, I replied with "You are absolutely correct. Me staying or not is meaningless. Consider my resignation immediately from this moment. Please give me the paperwork to sign." Somebody commented, "If I had $1 for every boomer that called me a millennial snowflake, I'd be able to buy a house in the market they destroyed." Story 11. I worked at a smallish company that grew big enough to hire an HR person. Her office was down from mine, so in the mornings I'd swing by and say hi. That turned into grabbing a cup of coffee she had just made, then into having a pastry and talking about life. I found that if I mentioned someone's name in passing, a few minutes later, she would spill the beans about that person's life, what work issues they had, health issues, family issues, etc. I learned really quickly any issues I had not to take to her. She made it like 6 months before she got fired. Story 12. After 4 years on the job, I was given a first and final warning for asking why the hell HR was behind a locked door and now dominated over half the first floor, filled with new furniture that was unused after 6 months. Meanwhile, my chair was taken by another employee, and I was told to use the chair without padding. An executive from another department heard my complaint, stole one of the unused chairs from the HR expansion, and gave it to me, explaining that if I did it, I'd be fired. She did it daring them to fire her. Shout out to that executive for stepping up and doing somewhat of the right thing, even if there is more to be done. Also, such a power move, because I can imagine her just moving it in front of everyone and practically daring them with her eyes to say anything. Story 13. Our HR always abuses the company budget. They have the nicest ergonomic keyboards, a fancy coffee machine in their office, and are the first to receive gifts from vendors. One time, they did the food tasting for the company year-end party that they were organizing. Catering company allowed 2 people for food tasting, and they will charge $100 for additional people. The entire HR department went in the afternoon and charged the company for the tasting fee, of course. Story 14. I had an insurance issue that I discussed with one person in HR privately and mentioned to no one else. My coworker then asked me about it an hour later, meaning my coworker's buddy in HR must have gossiped about my issue, which was totally inappropriate. At least it was a small thing, and I learned I cannot trust that particular person in HR. Story 15. I use the term piss off, as in get lost, in an unofficial online forum. Someone alerted a corporate recruiter who managed to dig through my previous post, connect dots, narrow down who I was, and have the head of HR terminate my job offer without discussion. Never knew piss was considered profanity. Look, this one is a little off for me. If the forum was something like Reddit where it had nothing to do with the job, then yeah, being denied the job offer is absolutely stupid. If for some reason was connected to the job, I can honestly understand them turning down OP. Story 16. The HR person used her position to collect intel to get people she didn't like fired. Somebody commented, "That's standard practice for all HR. Firing people they don't like is the only way they get to stroke their power trip when things are otherwise going well in the company." Story 17. Not HR, but heed my warning. Don't type anything into your work computer that you wouldn't say directly to your company's HR person's face. I have seen people have cases built against them for poor work and ultimately fired for the crap they say over Skype.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.